Hi, everyone, and welcome to What Would My Shrink Say, a podcast where you get inside the heads of a couple psychologists and see life through their eyes. You'll never be the same. Hey, Todd.
Dr. Wignall, how are you?
Doing okay. I got sap in my hair. Has it ever happened to you? Like pine sap?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I've yeah. You got sap in your
stuff out of my car, and we got this big pine tree above like where the car stays. And I went to like brush the hair out of my eyes, and there's this giant glob of sticky stuff. And I went, oh my gosh. And so I went inside, and like this huge clump of hair was like and pine sap it's like super glue, man.
Yeah. I think people used to like use that stuff to like seal their boats and stuff, right?
Ooh. Oh yeah, maybe.
Long ago. Yeah, it's pretty sticky.
Yeah, it's a sticky situation, as they say.
Wow.
But I'm through the woods for the most part. Don't you worry.
With your pine sap. A lot of puns here.
The pine sap.
A lot of puns.
Okay, what are we actually talking about today?
We're talking about the consequences of avoiding choices.
Avoiding choices. Who ever avoids choices, Dr. Sewell? This never happens. This can't be a problem.
Well, this is odd because I guess in any
us.
situation, a choice is always possible. So I guess maybe sometimes we're, but avoiding maybe making decisions.
Yeah. So how did this? I think this was one of your topics. How did this come up for you? Like, what made you think about this topic, or did someone ask specifically about it, or?
No, I often have clients who are, let's say, I recently a client who was looking at a medical procedure that was kind of scary. But the doctors, several doctors had told this person that they needed the surgery, and she was kind of really struggling with deciding to go ahead and have the surgery and have it done. Because there were risks involved, and anytime there are risks involved, it's probably a good idea to make sure that you want to do that thing.
Sure.
But it turned into lots and lots of just kind of avoiding to decide to do this thing, and not even wanting to make the decision, right? Avoiding that choice. And we discussed kind of how this process was working out for them, and the direction it was heading in. It looked like the time she had to make the decision was going to run out eventually, and then somebody else would have to decide for her.
Oh.
And that was one of the consequences they were able to identify and kind of making a decision themselves, because
Gotcha.
They would prefer to make that decision rather than have somebody else do it.
So it almost sounds like kind of a special case of procrastination, right? Where the thing you're avoiding is making a decision specifically, and it's mostly out of anxiety or fear.
Yeah, whereas sometimes procrastination is, I think, classically just, I don't want to do that thing just now. Well, you can do it later.
It's more like laziness or something else.
Yeah, but in several occasions, you meet people who are looking at different opportunities, different choices in their life, and occasionally avoiding kind of making any decision around that, and really understanding the consequences of avoiding making choices sometimes is an important conversation to have.
You think, did your client not understand the consequences, or basically understood them, but was just too afraid to make the choice? Because a lot of people I know in situations like this, they basically know that avoiding this is not great for them. Maybe they're not super clear on the specifics of the consequences and why deferring is not good, but they basically, like, intellectually kind of know, this probably isn't a good idea. I should probably just make a decision, but I can't.
I'm sure they're aware that this is an issue for them. Yeah.
So what's going on there? Like, what's the psychology behind that? Like, when we basically know I should just make a decision, but I'm not, even though I kind of know it's not in my best interest. Like, what's going on? Like, is this just self-sabotage, or like, what are we doing here?
Well, I think that's a 5,000 foot kind of view of what's going on. Really on the ground, though, what's happening is I think people are developing a really bad habit of thinking rather than doing and choosing. It's it's an avoidant maneuver. You don't have to make the decision, but you think a lot about it. And that seems to be at least somewhat productive, right? If I'm thinking about it all the time, then I'm making some headway in this thing. The problem is you're almost training yourself to engage in this habit of perseverating about something rather than making a choice about something.
So maybe it's like a kind of rationalization, like like a little voice in our head says, "No, come on, like you know what you need to do, just do it." And then another little voice pops up and says, "Well, like I don't know, like we haven't really covered all the variables. I could probably like spend a little more time thinking about this, maybe." So it's not that we know one way or another. We've got these kind of like competing teams in our head, and the one you're talking about is sort of this rationalizer that's saying, "No, you know what? Don't make a decision yet. Like think about it a little bit more."
Or this is really scary, and what if this, and what if that, and what if this, and what if that, and I need to understand everything that could possibly go wrong in order to feel good about doing this thing. And getting in the habit of telling yourself that is means that you waste a lot of time and opportunity probably.
Yeah, and part of the habit thing is interesting too, because and I'd be curious to see what you think about this. But one of the ways I think about avoiding decisions as a habit is that we get in the habit of listening to one of those voices in our heads and ignoring the other ones, right? We get really focused in on and really tuned into the one who says, "Oh no, you got to think more about it," right? We kind of block out some of those other voices that are saying,
you're teaching yourself that is the way to handle this, over and over and over again. The more you do that, the better you'll be at it. I mean, we are what we rehearse over and over. And if every time there's kind of a situation that comes with a little twinge of anxiety, I think that really does cue people into this kind of worry or perseveration or kind of stalling out in thinking about a problem.
Yeah. So the anxiety piece is important there because on the one hand, if there is really something dangerous and we experience fear, right, then yeah, oftentimes you do want to like, well, wait a second, should I actually do this? Like I'm about to get in a car with 3 other people, including the driver, who have all been drinking for 8 hours straight. Like, like let me take a minute and think about this. Like, okay, yeah, you want to listen to that voice, think a little bit more about the voice, right? But if it's this, I need to make this, have this medical procedure. I've thought about it 400 different ways for the last 5 months. All my doctors are telling me I should do it. I've talked to all sorts of other people about it. They all think it's probably the right decision. Is that fear of something like a rational sort of threat, or is this more anxiety in the sense of you're feeling fear, but it's the thing itself is not actually dangerous? And so if you're indulging or giving credence to that voice that's telling you to be afraid of something that feels scary but maybe isn't actually the most dangerous outcome, you're making that voice louder and louder, and which means going forward you're going to pay more and more attention to it, and so you get caught in these kind of negative feedback loops, right?
Yeah, where there's this kind of cycle of I feel this way, so I avoid, and then I perseverate and worry, and then I avoid because I'm freaking myself out, and I'm perseverating, I'm worrying, and around you go.
Yeah, so that's tricky, is being careful to think through, am I paying attention to this one voice because it's the smartest voice in the room, or because my feelings are kind of pushing me that way?
Yeah. Is my anxiety my how good I am at identifying what ifs? Is that winning and making the decision versus other cues?
Yeah,
to safety maybe.
Seems like the other way to get at this too is to look at what I call little W and big W wants. Like when we say we want something, it's a tricky word because it tends to do a lot of work, too much probably, but we can say we want things in the sense of like, thinking about this decision makes me anxious. I don't want to feel anxious anymore. So I'll wait till next Thursday to make a decision about it. Right? Great. I don't have to feel anxious until next Thursday. Theoretically.
Yeah.
I don't know if that actually works out, or like, I want to be healthy and live another 20 years. Right? That's a big W want, right? That's a value, right? Something that's really important. But the tricky part is those little W wants often sabotage those big W wants, right? So we know, okay, I want to do what's healthy. All my doctors are telling me this is what I need to do. Many of the voices in my head tell me this is the right thing to do. But this other want to not feel anxious anymore is kind of out, is winning, right? And like you said, the more you listen to and give into that little W want, the stronger those little W's are going to be in your life at the expense of a lot of those bigger W's.
Yeah. And around and around you go, and the pattern becomes set. I'm often reminded too of I think it was Sylvia Plath's fig tree kind of metaphor. She sat at the base of this fig tree in this dream she had or something like that, and there were all sorts of possible lives that she could have. The writer, the doctor, the lawyer, the mother, the this or that, whatever, and she realized that as she sat there kind of perseverating over which figs she should go after, some of them started falling from the tree and were no longer possibilities. And so that one consequence of not making a decision sometimes is that those opportunities will just go away, that there won't be opportunities anymore. And so, yeah, another kind of fierce consequence of not being able to decide and choose. Yeah.
And I think in my experience, one of the reasons those little W's so often kind of outcompete the big W's is that we don't remind ourselves enough of the big W's. We kind of intellectually know they're there, but we kind of keep them in the closet,
Yeah.
But when they're out there in the full light of day and you're consciously thinking a lot about them, it's hard for them not to outshine some of those little W's. So I think a lot of times the trick is to figure out ways to keep those big W wants, those values, like your health, right? The quality of your relationships, whatever, peace of mind, right? Keep those ones really front and center. Do things to really remind yourself of those and keep those visible. Because if you don't, those little W's, I want to feel less anxious in the moment, right? I want this like hit of pleasure. I want this little whatever. Those are going to outcompete those, and you're going to end up falling into what looks like self-sabotaging behavior.
Yeah, I often tell clients that those values, those big W kind of things, are your North Star, and you want to make your decisions based on is this in line with that? Is that going to get me there? And oftentimes avoiding making decisions is probably not going to get you there to where you want to go.
Yeah. And it is sometimes the result of, to go with the North Star metaphor, you're walking around and you're kind of looking at your feet all the time and you're never looking up.
Yeah.
Right? So you're paying attention to all those little W's. But if you never kind of look up and ask yourself and remind yourself of what are the really big important things that really matter to me, they're not going to have as much weight, and you're going to end up doing what looks like self-sabotage, which you're not actually sabotaging yourself. You're letting those little W's outcompete the big W's.
Well, that's a good point, that you need to take a bearing from the North Star fairly frequently to remind yourself of where you're going. Yeah.
It's like if you're to stick with the hiking metaphor, if your compass is like buried down at the bottom of your backpack, you're going to take it out and look at it a lot less often, right?
Yeah.
But if your compass is hanging from a little thing on your shoulder strap and you're constantly feeling it, you're going to check it out a lot more, and you're less likely. It's less likely you're going to get lost.
Yeah, you're not going to spend a lot of time off trail. Yeah.
So to me, that would be the thing. If you're in this situation of avoiding a lot of difficult decisions, I actually think one of the best things you can do is make it a point to create some sort of a routine or a mechanism where your big W wants, your values, you're like forcing those to be front and center all the time. You're constantly reminded of them. Because I think when you do that, when those are more clear and present, those little W's are going to have less pull in comparison.
Hey everyone, Nick and I really appreciate you listening to the podcast. Please rate us on iTunes if you get a chance. And if you have any feedback or comments for us, that'd be great as well. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover in the podcast, let us know in the comment section as well. Thanks.